Hello and welcome to Team Franco Bodybuilding Podcast. Hoping you guys are doing awesome out there, getting it done both in and out of the gym. And another little tagline where we talk about bodybuilding, fitness life, discipline, and doing things the right way. But I'm not sure if I could remember saying that all the time. The last two podcasts had been I've had a nice reaction. It's certainly pretty cool to see people respond, digging them, reposting it, especially the last one and the one before when I talked about the 15-foot rule, which I think really teaches us how to avoid the micromanaging that we often do during contest prep. So I think it's apropos to keep the topic going along. And as you see in the title for today's episode, what I want to talk about, to have a successful prep, you have to understand why you're doing it. So I've come up with 5 reasons. Now, you can be in the camp of all 5. Doesn't necessarily mean you're in camp 1, 2, 3, or 4. It could be a combination. I'm not judging anyone. This is for conversational sake. Only because this is what I've learned throughout the years, what I've seen on social media, working with clients. But I've also understand that maybe if you're really deep in one of these, it might not be the best thing. But it's just a reminder of understanding why you're doing it. Because contest prep will test you. There's going to be days it's going to be hard. There's going to be days when the scale doesn't move, when your energy's low, and you might be even questioning the process. So in a positive way, you can look back at the reason why you're doing it to keep you going. So that is something on the flip side where it's not negative. So again, it's not judgmental. It's just a conversation. So I just want to talk about some of the real reasons why people step on stage. And again, none of them are wrong, none are right. It's just being honest with yourself and something that you can look in the mirror about. So the first one, and this is, I think, one of the best ones, and even like when I first started competing without social media, it's always been you versus you, right? It's just taking how you look like and how your physique is, and then making the necessary changes to your lifestyle, increasing the habits, improving your physique, and being comfortable enough to be on stage. Now, I'm not going to go into deep on like when that is. I've had podcasts about all those minute little or more specific topics, but it is you versus you. You want to test your discipline. You want to see if you can follow through with the goal that requires many months of consistency, sacrifice, and effort. And honestly, this is, to me, the favorite reason to compete. And this is, to me, probably one of my biggest audience is of clients. Those who might have weight trained off and on, was inspired something or however on social media, and then want to give it a go themselves. So they dig my philosophies and we set them on a path so they can achieve the goal, and always reminding themselves it's you versus you. Because when it is you versus you, it's more personal. You're not worried about the other person on stage. And that's one of the mantras that I always tell my clients, people that attend my posing class, and even to the fact that you're not always worried about placings. Only because, again, if you improved your physique over the years of training and the dedication to do a contest prep, you don't give a shit. You achieved it. It's the contest, is the celebration. You focused on finishing what you started, and you became a better version of yourself than when you first began on prep. That mindset alone can carry someone through a very successful contest prep. Now, I get it. There are people that are super competitive and want to crush other competitors. And, you need a little competitiveness, but I'm going to get into that as we go along. But if you are establishing the reason why you want to compete, I think the number one reason is you versus you, where you can't escape that. And I mean that in a good way. because, again, you own it. You focus on it. You can control it. You can change paths when necessary to reach your goal. And not necessarily there's always a strict timeline. All right. So we're going to go on to the next reason why I do believe people compete. And again, I kind of fell into this camp also because I was a high school and college athlete. And one of the other big reasons why people compete, especially, in their mid-20s, late 20s, because they're athletes and they're looking for a new outlet. And they were used to that competitiveness, and maybe they had an injury in college, or high school, when they competed, whatever sport, insert blank sport, whatever it is. And either the injury or maybe that chapter ended. They couldn't compete in that sport anymore where there weren't any adult leagues. But they realize when that chapter ends, something's missing. They miss the structure. They miss the competition, the challenge of working towards something, right? Where they're so dedicated, not only their schoolwork, but they're so dedicated for the sport that they were doing. They can't do it anymore. Obviously, most likely they were weight training in some fashion and they took to it. So bodybuilding becomes a new outlet for that competitive drive. It gives people something to train again for, something to focus on, to measure progress with. And for a lot of former athletes, stepping on that bodybuilding stage brings back the feeling of purpose that they once had in sports. And that I appreciate, where, again, I played baseball even out of college, but then I was just getting beat up, hamstring injuries, blah, 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 blah. And that's probably because I was lifting heavy weights. But the competitiveness that I've always had for all those years off the stage allowed me to continue doing it even well into my 50s. So that is the one beautiful thing about bodybuilding, because even if you were competitive back then, just didn't have time to bodybuild, well, you always have the opportunity to go back to it and reignite that fire of competitiveness that you once had. So those two trump, meaning I think they're big, the first two. You versus you, you're a competitive athlete before, and you want to revisit that feeling and that control and the excitement of doing something that you didn't think you were able to do, but now you have a new outlet. So reason number 3, again, this is the darker side, where I've seen since social media became a thing maybe 10, 15 years ago, and the explosion of it. And it definitely plays a role today. It's the social media aspect and getting attention. I hate to say it, but I have observed it. Not necessarily with my clients or people I'm associated with, but I've seen it because people will tag me that do my shows. And then basically it's about attention. That's the tough part. I mean, it was inevitable, but I see it. We simply live in a time where bodybuilding is constantly on display, right? I mean, those selfies, the perfect lighting, perfect angles, and everyone just promotes their highlight reel and not really the downtime or injuries or just a highlight reel. And sometimes people see that and think, you know what, that looks awesome. I want to do that. Maybe they want the photos, maybe they want the attention or the recognition or all three. And listen, again, I'm not here to judge anyone for that, but you need also to understand something. The stage is only for a few minutes. Contest prep, though, is many, many months of hard work. That is the contradictory part of people that wants to flash, not fame, but the excitement of getting attention by holding up a trophy. But sometimes they forget that there's going to be early mornings, strict dieting, hard training sessions, cardio session, whatever, everything that prep and the tough part has. Sometimes they don't remember that, and they just want to do as little work as possible to get the even more attention. And to me, if the only motivation is really outside validation, that motivation can fade really fast, guys, especially when prep gets difficult. That's why somewhere deep down, you really have to remind yourself on why you're doing this. And it's hoping it's not for the likes on the gram or for more views on TikTok, and hoping that you may, accumulate money or get paid on social media by doing selfies, the food that you eat or anything like that. Now, obviously, I have clients that post on social media, but I know that they're doing it for themselves. I know that they're checking off the boxes in a positive mindset. But not everyone's doing that. I'm not saying it's a large population, but that's something that you need to recognize and learn how to separate, and hoping that you don't go down that path. The fourth thing, and again, something that I've experienced, and I've had clients experience it, good and bad, but if you have the right mindset, it can be a positive outlook, is that when people decide to compete, they use it as an outlet during stressful times. So twice in my life, I had terrible, stressful times, and I decided to compete. The first is when we had a small fitness center going back, could be 20 years now. Anyway, we're closing the shop, right? That, it didn't work out. So I decided to compete because that gave me control again. Now, it wasn't the first time competing, where I've done, shows early in the 90s and all that. But coincidentally, it was the first OCB show I did, and history wrote itself after that. But I digress. To the point, it was a very stressful time because we were losing money, the business didn't work, yada, yada, yada. You learn from it. But I use bodybuilding as an outlet for me to regain some control. That's number one thing that I went through many years ago. Now, when people do it and they want to compete because of stressful times, it could be a variety of things, right? It could be stress from work, family situations, major life changes. And during those moments, people look for something that gives them that structure and control. And to me, that's not a bad thing. I think that's healthy. Contest prep can be that outlet of giving yourself that structure and control. It provides you with a routine. It gives you something to, productive to focus on. The training, the diet, cardio, sleep, everything becomes much more organized and purposeful. And for some people, that structure can actually help them navigate during difficult times in their lives. As long as it doesn't make it worse, which you don't want that to happen, but it gives them something positive to pour their energy into. And the second time that I had a terrible, anxiety issue, I used it to my advantage, again, to regain control. I competed. And that's when I did the Yorton Cup back in 2019. So it can be a positive outlet during stressful, hard life stuff times. But I will also capture this for you guys. If it's a stressful time of competing itself, just don't do it to prove something. I talked about that I was a guest on a podcast once, and I probably talked about that a couple of times, that if the prep itself is an issue with family members or your lifestyle or whatever the case, then that's something different. But I'm saying as an individual, if you decide to do a prep during a stressful time and it's not going to hurt anyone around you, but possibly help you by regaining some structure, I think it could be a major, major positive. So the fifth reason that I want to cover why people compete and do the journey of a contest prep and enter the realm of bodybuilding and doing shows. Again, this is a middle one where it's not a terrible thing. I think it's a positive thing because it can help us strive, and that is trying to become a pro and evolving. Simply meaning not just doing the you versus you, competing in one show, not just doing it because you were an athlete and need an outlet or a stressful time or for social media, but to climb the ladder where people fall in love with the process, no matter how they do in their first couple of shows, right? It could be one show, it could be two or three, but they always want to get better. And that is the big take home point: evolving, getting better. They always want to improve their physique. They want to refine their posing. They want feedback from judges, coaches, peers, people at the gym. They simply want to step on stage and then see that progress coming. And then maybe, just maybe, it will lead to the ultimate prize of winning a pro card, which is certainly a huge accomplishment. And then thereafter, doing what needs to be done to compete at the pro stage and have an impact. So I think this could be a positive as long as you have the right positive mindset, not expecting that you should win your card or da-da-da-da. But understand it's a process. It's a process, a little bit at a time, where maybe it's seeing how far they can really push themselves in the sport does lead to be a positive. And at that point, competing becomes, again, an evolution. You're not just doing one prep. You're developing yourself as a physique athlete. You're studying the craft, and you're trying to get better with presenting an improved package every time you step on stage. And with the right mindset, I think that could be a productive way of one of the reasons why you want to compete. So the truth is, again, guys, people compete for many different reasons. Some want to challenge themselves. Some are former athletes. Some enjoy the spotlight. Some want to pursue the sport at its highest level. Some use it as a way to create structure during difficult times. And honestly, I would never judge anyone for choosing any of those paths. But the one thing that matters the most is this: you have to be doing it for yourself. Because when the diet gets hard, when the energy gets low, when the progress slows down, the thing that keeps you going the most is internal motivation. A reason that matters to you most, a purpose that reminds you why you started. And if you understand that, contest prep is more about getting lean. It becomes a test of your discipline, character, and personal growth. And for that, it makes the journey worth it. So if you guys enjoy this, please let me know. Tag someone, save it, send it to someone who may be competing for the first time. And remember, know your reason, trust the process, and keep on grinding, guys. If you're interested in my coaching and you dig my style and philosophy, it's always best to email me, fitfranco@verizon.net. Check me out on the socials, and I will talk to you next time.